Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Yo, this is number one, John Silver. I'm talking about the meat man. I'm talking about that big boy. And of course, you know I'm talking about the raw dog. And you're listening to the Working Fans Podcast.
This is the Working Fans Podcast. It's the number one fan, Dave, producer Joe. And today we got one of the best independent wrestlers in the game, Mr. John Silver. John, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How you doing?
Great. So, basic question to start off with, John. What are your earliest memories of wrestling, and how'd you break in, and how did this all start?
Early memories of wrestling. I'm 28 right now, so I got like Attitude Era, and like right before the Attitude Era was like my main. Those are my main memories. So like earliest stuff I remember was like Shawn Michaels was on top. I think like my biggest memory of like childhood memory was the Stone Cold versus Shawn Michaels feud. That's like the peak of my childhood was then.
Yeah, actually, I went to see WrestleMania 14 in Boston. It was Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin. That was good stuff.
Oh shit, awesome. I had a kid, so when I was in, I don't know, first, second, third grade around there, there was a kid that he was a wrestling fan, and you'd think like we'd get along with wrestling fans, but I fucking hated him because he was a big Shawn Michaels fan, and I was a big Stone Cold fan. So I was like, so we had this big feud, we hated each other, but eventually like became like best friends because we're like, we both like wrestling, let's just be friends then. so that's one of my earliest memories right there. Obviously, after that, too, Attitude Era. But I was always, like, a big Stone Cold guy growing up, Undertaker. But eventually, like, moving forward, I always had different people. I would start to, like, Jeff Hardy down the line. Then it became, like, Kurt Angle, Jericho. My early memories was definitely, like, that early, right before the Attitude Era, like, started, but, like, right there.
I was going to laugh if you told me that kid was Alex Reynolds.
No. Alex is a little older than me. He's a few years older than me. I met Alex when we both joined the wrestling school right around the same time. I think he started maybe 2 weeks before me. That's how I met Alex.
Awesome. What school did you go to? How did you get trained? How did that break in?
I started at NYWC in Long Island, and I came across it because I was on a MySpace wrestling fan page, really a forum basically, and I was 14 at the time, so I'm like, let's just see if there's any wrestling schools in the area. So I put out like a post, and hey, does anyone know any good wrestling schools in Long Island? And someone was like, there's NYWC, it's in Deer Park, Long Island, and the head trainer is Mikey Whipwreck.
Huh.
So I'm like, oh shit, let me check that out. So, I mean, we hit them up, we called them, and they're like, we usually train people, we start usually around 16, but you can come down and check out the school. So I went down and checked out the school. And it just so happened that they were doing shut the top rope that day. So they had me crash pad up, doing backflips, machine stars, and stuff like that. So I was like, oh damn, this stuff's awesome. So I was there with my mom, and I was always an athlete. So, and I was just, at the time, it was amateur wrestling season, so I was in shape. And they're like, since you're an athlete, you're a wrestler, we'll just start training now if you want. So we got signed up that way.
What other sports did you do?
Amateur wrestling, I played soccer also. Those are the main ones I played, a national team.
Yeah.
But, I grew up on my block. I just happened to have, maybe 8 kids around the same age. So, we, played football, every sport, every day. We're always, every day we're outside playing some kind of sport. So, I was, just always athletic, always active, always doing stuff. But soccer and wrestling are my 2 sports growing up.
I mean, those are both great conditioning stuff, too. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely helps.
So, when you broke in, who were some of the people who really took care of you in the beginning?
So, I guess, the people that were in charge of doing stuff, Mikey obviously was a trainer who, at least, I wasn't, as a kid, I wasn't a big ECW fan just because I didn't know much about it. I didn't know when it was on. I didn't know how to watch it. That's when, I know it sounds weird, but that's when the internet wasn't, everyone just goes on the internet for everything right now.
Right.
But back then, you knew the internet, you could use the internet, but on websites, I don't even understand those. I was young too. I wouldn't think you would say that, but I wouldn't I knew people, but it wasn't always on the internet looking up YouTube videos. YouTube was young still then, so it wasn't you could just find everything as easy as it was now. So I watched up on Mikey though, and I was like terrified of him, and he was like pretty intimidating. You know, he's very nice, but he's very intimidating. So yeah, I actually forgot what the question was. What's the question again?
Who's some of the guys who took care of you? That's all.
Oh, okay. So I had, I think right off the bat was probably Trent from W. He was there for maybe like 8 months or a year until he was signed by WWE for a while. So he was there. He was always like super nice to me. I had my first practice match against him, and just like we was in he messed around. He like had to do like a code red and some other stuff. And I was like 14, 15 years old. So he was always really good to me. Early on, I don't know who. Maybe early on, I think a lot of people were nice to me. I think some people were like, I was the 10th dummy back then. So I joined, I was 110 pounds. So people tried their moves on me. So I'm trying to think of who like really looked out for me and who just like tried moves on me. But down the line, like people like Dan Barry, looked out for me. A lot of people were really nice to me there. Some people like stopped wrestling or did other stuff. But I'm trying to think of people that are still like around and available. Trent was definitely the first one. I like the older guys. So I was like, oh shit, he's been super nice to me. I was like his little brother. He used to say I looked just like his little brother. He was the main one, I think, right off the bat.
It's kind of funny because like you talk to like some of like a lot of the old timers in the business, and you hear how rough it was. And not that it's not rough or tough now, but it seems like there's a lot more people willing to help now. Like everybody's a lot more thankful and grateful to have people around and help them in the business.
It's definitely not as crazy. Even wrestling now, from when I started, from back in the day, is like a completely different. But even from like now to when I started was completely different.
Yeah.
Like when I started, it was still like we had classes where we got our asses kicked constantly. Now you really can't. You can't do that, and it's probably better that you don't do that to an extent. I mean, you're still gonna like. It used to be like the reason they beat your ass did that so that the people that were tough enough and deserve to be in the ring could do it. And I guess it makes sense because you got a lot of people that really don't deserve to be in the ring that are still doing this. But you can't really just beat people up. I don't know. It's a whole different the business just changed completely, which is fine. I'm not not knocking that at all.
No, I hear you, and it's a different time in life too now too. It's been in the last 10 years too. So
different times,
I was going to ask you. I did my homework actually. We were talking about YouTube. I was looking up some matches of you before we did this, and I've seen you live at a few Beyond shows too. What are some other promotions you've worked for?
I've done like a whole bunch, obviously, but like on a consistent level. I mean, I started at MWC, so that was like my first place I was ever at. That's in Long Island. I had done Chikara for a while. I was at I still am at CZW, Beyond Wrestling, Limitless Wrestling. For a little while, we were at PWG, Evolved, AIW for a little while as well. Definitely was around, and like I kind of got to do a whole bunch of cool stuff. When I was younger, I used to only just do MWC because I just didn't know any better, I guess, to like move on, and not move on, but like to branch out.
Yeah.
And also, when I was young, when I started, I was like 14, 15, 16, like YouTube was still pretty young, and like when I looked up like indie wrestling, because I didn't really know too much about indie wrestling, I would see videos of like CGW and like ROH and people doing like some insane shit, like CW is super bloody and violent, and ROH, like, you see, like, people with Play-Doh suplexes on their head, crazy shit. So I was like, damn, I don't want to do this. And I was a young kid, so I'm like, these guys are going to kick my ass if I start going to these companies. So I was like, I didn't want to. So I think I started branching out when I was, like, 18, maybe a little past, like, 18, 19, and I started to kind of branch out a little bit. So I got lucky around, like, 20. I think I was 20 when I started doing Chikara. It was like a tryout type thing, and me and Alex, they had it was really weird. They was a tryout with all like the wrestlers, but all the guys that were watching, which is all the Chikara wrestlers and the people running it, like still had like their masks on and stuff.
Huh.
So it was like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
But everyone else, I think they did it because I think some of the people that were chosen for the tryout were like couldn't even be fans. They were so trash. Like they were like did not know the basics of wrestling. They were so bad. So me and Alex obviously stood out way better than everyone else. So we got used for Chikara, and we had to go down to train with them for a little bit. So that was cool too. The beginning, I started branching out with Evolve, and then I started to Evolve at the same time. So Evolve and Chikara, which is pretty cool.
Hey John, it's Joe here. Being from Connecticut, I just started getting into indie wrestling again a few years ago, and one of the first places my buddy brought me was Beyond Wrestling. And your style really stood out because you're hard-hitting, but you also have a sense of humor in the ring. I was wondering what you could tell us about Beyond Wrestling, and what was that American Rana that was held at Foxwoods this year like?
I guess it started out just being a place, and I remember hearing about it when I was like young. It was just a place that they had just tapings, so they just put it all on the YouTube, I believe, and it was just people like wrestlers wrestling in front of other wrestlers, and they just put that on the internet. And I was like, I didn't understand it because I had like at one point I did a show actually with John Gresham, and he was like pitching, you should go to Beyond Wrestling. And I think he said we should tag together because we're both short, muscular guys with buzzed heads. And so he's like, we look kind of alike, so we should team together. And I just didn't understand it. I'm like, I don't know, this sounds dumb, I don't know, I don't know if that's stupid. And then fast forward, eventually I started doing live shows and other stuff like that. And it just looked like a awesome place to wrestle. And you get a lot of freedom there, you get, you kind of do what you want. And the crowds there are always like a lot of fun. So it's just like a place where all different types of wrestling is welcome. Like a lot of places have like their niche vibe, I guess. They kind of, I don't even know if they have a niche vibe. They have, people like Nick Gage there that are doing like crazy matches. They have, great, fantastic technical wrestlers there. They have, funny guys, people that do comedy like, Orange Cassidy. So they just kind of have like a whole bunch of stuff, and they put a lot of like dream matches together. And right now what they're doing is called Uncharted Territory. So they run a weekly show, just like, Raw, SmackDown, AEW, and it's on every Thursday. I'll be there tomorrow. I'm wrestling Daniel Garcia tomorrow, and it's on independent TV. I don't know the exact website.
Independent Wrestling TV, actually, and I will definitely be watching. I watch most every Thursday.
Awesome. Those shows are awesome. They're a lot of fun, and there's always like different shit, new wrestlers to watch. So I always recommend it because even like some people I've never heard of or don't know much about, and they'll show up, and I'm like, yeah, like, because they have people on all the time. And sometimes they put on some like awesome matches, or sometimes Beyond will just put together matches that you never would see anywhere else, and they're pretty cool to see.
That Discovery Gauntlet I thought was an interesting idea, and it's really gotten us familiar with some names that we wouldn't have previously heard about.
Yeah, definitely. Brings in new people. Like I said, some of those people I've never really have heard of or seen pictures of. I've never seen them work, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're actually pretty good. So it's pretty cool to see new people like that. But the American Rock at Foxwoods is pretty cool. The place is pretty huge. A lot of fans there, so it was awesome. And I wrestled Alex, so we had a really good match to beat each other up. So that's pretty fun.
That had a really good storyline going in, and that's why I like that Beyond has their TV show, because you can line up stories to a big show like that. Like you versus Alex Reynolds, it's one of the matches I was more invested in, so I was looking forward to it at the show.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's like with indie wrestling, it's hard to sometimes have a storyline or have feuds like look good, because if you wrestle, you see a show once a month. It's hard to really know what's going on again. Like, at least on, like, Uncharted Territory, there's shows every week. And even if there's, like, I'm not there every single week, but even if I miss a week, I'll be there, in 2 weeks. So everything's still pretty fresh in your head. So you know what's going on.
It's funny. I saw that match with you and Reynolds, too. And I was thinking, like, Reynolds is a great heel. But I really liked your heel work, too. But I've seen you do both. You've been a babyface and a heel. Do you have a preference to what you like to do?
Yeah, it's funny because Alex is a good heel, is a really good heel, and I'm a really good babyface. So we came together, so there's times I gotta be a heel, and there's times I'm a babyface. I prefer to work as a baby. I think it's a natural babyface. I obviously don't mind doing either. I'm definitely more of a natural babyface.
It's funny. I would agree, but I would tell you, I saw some match with you, and I'm blanking out. It was a live show. It was an intergender match, and you did this cheap shot clothesline, and you celebrated like you won the gold medal in the Olympics. And I thought that was the best thing, man. It was a great heel move, honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah, your intergender matches and Beyond have been amazing. That's where I think I've seen some of the better heel work. Now, we interviewed Jay Freddy last week, and your name came up as someone he likes traveling with. What can you tell us about working with him in the Thick Boys tag team up in Limitless, and what can you say about Jay Freddy in general?
I love Jay. We get along really well. Obviously, we're big party boys. And eventually, I do Limitless, and Randy came up to me. Actually, he messaged me, and she's like, "Hey, I think about putting you and Jay together. What do you think?" I'm like, perfect. So I hit up Jay. I'm like, "Hey, Jay, we're gonna be the Thick Boys." He's like, absolutely perfect. So we don't do a lot of traveling together because he's an upstate guy and I'm from Long Island, and it's actually, I know it's like the same state, but he's like pretty far away from me. Every year we go to Ocean City now, Ocean City, Maryland, to party, and that's we get pretty crazy, get pretty drunk, pretty crazy stuff happens, and it's usually like a good drinking buddy, Yeah.
So, you guys fit together real good as a tag team. You really hit hard, and just the teamwork.
Yeah, so that's why it was funny for a while. I was tagging with both Alex and Jay on different shows. I think personality-wise, in-ring personality-wise, me and Jay fit very good together. We're very similar, but I think me and Alex, maybe because of we've known each other for so long, and we just take, I think, our best stuff as in-ring matches as a tag team. So we had that chemistry that way. I love Jay. I love tagging with Jay. I love tagging with Alex. So it's cool. It's two different things. So it was you have to be creative with both, which is pretty cool.
It was really cool to see you pop up on AEW a couple weeks ago. How did that come about?
Yeah, we got hit up by Young Bucks, and they said, "Hey, we want to bring you in for AEW." So I was like, awesome. Well, we're definitely in. So it's really cool there. I actually have it on the TV as I'm talking to you guys right now. It's a really fun place. It's a great show. It's very relaxed. Everyone's still there to work really hard, which is awesome. And we'll definitely be back.
Awesome.
It's a good thing.
Nice. Yeah, it was definitely good to see you guys on there. What are your plans kind of going forward in the business? Do you have any immediate goals coming up?
Immediate goals coming up. So I think my goal right now is just to be there full time, be at AEW full time, and that's the main one. Once we accomplish that, then we'll make new goals. But me and Alex, we talked about some stuff in our future. Cause we've had companies talk to us and hit us up, and I think we kind of both agreed that AEW might be the place to be.
It's awesome, man. Is there anything that you want to promote and tell people where they can find you?
Main things I want to promote, I guess, would be Uncharted Territory, Beyond Wrestling, IndependentTV.com. Is that what it was again?
Yes.
Independent Wrestling TV.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Go to the website, sign up, use promo code BEYOND, I believe it is, I hope.
Yep.
I think you the week or month or something like that. I don't know. I'm really bad at promoting this. But jump out there and check it out. There's a lot of cool wrestling on there. Even if it's not just Beyond, there's other stuff you can watch as well. ECW, I'll be there. All their shows pretty much. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. And my handle is kind of annoying. It is Silver. Number is spelled out. And then just the one. And I like to post dumb stuff, some funny stuff, random memes sometimes. I don't know. I just try to be stuff that, random stuff I like to do, I guess.
Yeah, you're a good follow, man. I follow you, and you do some stuff on Instagram. I saw you singing some opera music one day in the car. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, I do some car singing sometimes. I'll post some memes. I like to do posts for dumb pictures sometimes. Yeah, I'll post some random stuff, but check me out on there.
Yeah, good luck to you in AEW, and we'll look forward to seeing you both in AEW and beyond. Have a good night, bud.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Good talking to you.
All right, awesome. Have a good night, John. Thank you.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, workingfanswrestling_pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.
Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
This is Roy Lucier, and you're listening to the Working Fans Podcast.
Welcome back to the Working Fans Podcast. And this week, we have a very special guest. This man is the epitome of a working fan. I would argue that he's up there with Scott Teal, Mark James, and Jim Cornette when it comes to helping preserve wrestling history. He is the proprietor of Roy'sWrestlingVault.com. He's a former guest on the 605 Super Podcast. You've heard him on Keeping It 100, being introduced as Roy Lucifer. He is Roy Lucier. Roy, how are you doing today? And thank you for joining us.
Oh my God, I can't believe you remember that. Yeah, I rib Conan about that every time I see him too. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that intro, and that's amazing. Thank you so much.
No problem. Now, I'm very familiar with you. Dave is a little less so. For anyone else that's unfamiliar with you, can you give a little background about yourself?
All right, basically I've been watching wrestling since 81. As a kid, I went to shows in my area. I grew up near Anaheim. Actually, was born in Garden Grove, so I went to a lot of wrestling shows in the Anaheim and LA area growing up. When I was 17 years old, I got introduced to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and I started learning more about other shows in the area and other TV shows in the area. So I used to, my parents had a big satellite dish, so I would tape the Lucha Libre shows that were on the dish from all the different promotions, and I'd start tape trading, so that's how I amassed a huge tape trading collection. I also learned where some Japanese stores were in my area that rented the weekly TV shows. So it's around 1992, so just watched all that. I ended up going to a lot of the AAA shows that were in the area at the LA Sports Arena, the big ones like When Worlds Collide. I was front row for that. But not just When Worlds Collide, all the littler shows they did that they ran, I went to pretty much all those unless I got kicked out of the show. Long story there. But it's just, I've been a fan for so long. In fact, even last night I went to a show in San Francisco with LA Park and Flamita and Puma King on the show. And, this is just my passion,
Roy, that's awesome. I'm kind of curious because, remember kind of wrestling the same way, but I wasn't as exposed as much to the different stuff as you were. But I'm kind of curious, being exposed to that much wrestling at that time, like who were some of the people that drew you in, like characters, matches?
Oh, Super Delphine and Michinoku Pro jumps out immediately. He was just like so charismatic, loved his mask. I thought he was just like a step above, everybody else. Michinoku Pro, if no one out there has heard of it, basically it was a Lucha Libre type company that ran in Japan where they had, masked wrestlers, and they pretty much did it under Lucha rules. That's where Great Sasuke, Taka Michinoku, WWE announcer Funaki started. That was a huge promotion that I was really into. Obviously, All Japan, New Japan, All Japan Women, the Lucha promotions in Mexico, AAA, CMLL, UWA. As far as characters, Rey Mysterio Jr. Oh, geez, I remember when he started back in Santa Ana in 1990, he was using the name El Colibri, the hummingbird. He was like 5'3", 120 pounds wrestling, but you could always tell there was something special about him. But back then there was that mental stigma that, he's just too small and, he's never going to get anywhere. And lo and behold, AAA and ECW believed in him and enough to, kind of get him out there. And then WCW took the risk and brought him in. And, the rest is history. Those are the two that jump out immediately that really attracted, hooked me in and stuff. Oh, geez, there's so many like big name lucha characters over the years that I could think of. Silver King, Picano. UWA used to bring in like random foreigners like Bam Bam Bigelow, Bad News Brown, Andre the Giant. That you would turn it on. It was like you see these lucha guys in the ring with the Americans that have name value to us that we're used to. And it was a cool time to be a fan.
Now you were speaking of the tape trading community back then. More recently, I've interacted with you and both Justin Desind of WrestleTopia in the current tape trading market. Since you've been tape trading so long, what are the similarities and what are the differences over the years?
Everything is a lot easier accessible nowadays. With YouTube, and Daily Motion, and I'm sure there's other ones that are out there similar to it that are out there. It's a completely different market. I remember you would order a tape or trade a tape with somebody, wait a few days and get it, and you'd get some fourth generation skippity video that, you deal with the skips just to watch the great stuff, and you'd be happy with it. Like, I remember when I heard about the Riki Choshu shoe kick incident with Akira Maeda, and I got it. That tape must have been seventh generation, jumping around and stuff like that. But I was like, a little kid at Christmas time when I got to see it. That it just a lot. Really, it's a lot better nowadays to be a fan as far as the accessibility to seeing all the great wrestling. As long as you're able to have a venue for it. Like, I really noticed, like, AAA doesn't put out any of their old TV shows professionally. Like, on their Twitch channel, everything starts from, like, 2002, 2003, and then they just randomly put stuff up with no order. Well, what about the fans that want to see stuff from the 90s? Or, like an order. Like, I wish they had some kind of paid deal like WWE had with their network, where you could actually choose the week that you want to watch or the matches that you want to watch, instead of them just throwing random matches up on their 24-hour channel. So that's why I try my best. I have several YouTube channels out there for the listeners to check out. Now, because of copyright issues, what I do is I spread out the videos depending on the promotion or where it's from. So I got a lot of YouTube channels like Roy Lucier CMLL, Roy Lucier AAA, Roy Lucier Japanese Classics, Roy Lucier Wrestling Independence, Roy Lucier CMLL, and so on and so forth. So that way I can throw up a bunch of videos on there, and let's say, lo and behold, something gets copyright and the channel gets taken down. Well, there's still another 12 channels that are up there to get around every video get taken down. So that's, something I've tried to do and I upload on those every single day to try to put something up for the fans to watch.
And that was something I was just showing Dave about, because when I was giving him the rundown of you, I had to show him the YouTube channels and be like, this guy, I don't know how he finds hours in the day to work a job and then to post all this historical footage and great footage too. Like, if you're not checking out Roy Lucier's YouTube channels, you're not doing life right at the moment.
Roy, I'm guessing you don't sleep a lot too.
I work on little sleep.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Now, Roy, we're from the New England area, and we're lucky to be, like, in the hotbed of WWE. We've got great independent promotions like NEW and Beyond Wrestling around us. What's the indie scene like around you, and what promotions do you frequent?
The biggest promotion that I frequent is Pro Wrestling Revolution out here. It's run by Gabriel Ramirez. He's been in business for, I'd say, about 11 years now. I remember they had their 10-year anniversary a year ago, so I want to say 11. I am such a huge fan of Lucha Libre that I am very partial toward the lucha scene. Gabe does his best to bring in lucha guys from all around the world. Not only that, but earlier this year, he was the only one of record to date that has brought in Jun Akiyama to work in the United States. He brought him into San Francisco March earlier this year for a show, for his U.S. debut. So I'm very partial toward Gabe, and if anyone, I would, give him the first shout out. Also, All Pro Wrestling, they used to be run by Roland Alexander. Many of you recognize the name from the Beyond the Mat documentary. They still run in Daly City a few times a year. It's now run by Marcus Jacobson, Marcus Mack. They got an amazing promotion there. They run the King of Indie tournaments every July. Supreme Pro Wrestling is here in Sacramento. There's a few other ones as well. Total Wrestling Federation, and I think that the Virgil Flynn shut down earlier this year. But we got a small scene out here. Usually for any kind of like really good shows, you got to drive that hour and a half, 2 hours to get there. But it's definitely well worth it after the show is over. I went to a show last night, and the main event was LA Park, the original La Parka against JR Kratos from the Border Patrol. It was just a wild brawl all over the building. I posted video of it up on my Twitter and my Facebook for anyone to watch, but that was just 25 minutes of all over the place brawling. That was just amazing, and surprisingly, LA Park lost the match.
Wow. That's amazing, because JR Kratos, I've only been familiar with him from the APW scene, but he did pop up on, I believe, the last couple Bloodsports.
Yes, he beat Simon Gotch on, or what was his new name, Simon Grimm?
Yeah, they kind of go between the two, it seems.
Yeah, he fought Simon Grimm on the Bloodsport in April. I remember it was like the second match on the show. Kratos actually lives in the same area I do out here in Sacramento, so it was like, kind of huge to watch that. And I remember he did this like jumping fist down on him and, ended up getting the win. Kratos is a big guy that I'm really shocked has not got that big, because he's in the same camp as Jeff Cobb. I'm really kind of surprised, not just Jeff Cobb, but Tim Thatcher as well. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten his big break yet, especially with so many big promotions that are signing talent and, the scene getting, kind of smaller and smaller.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of got into the next question right away, but who are some of the next big names coming out of that area that the average fan might not be familiar with?
Colt Stevens, the other Border Patrol guy. I mean, he's a Davey Richards, Eddie Edwards type guy that I'm pretty high on. Obviously, JR Kratos. Jacob Fatu got signed by MLW, so that took care of that one.
That's major right there.
Yeah, I'm really happy for him. That was huge. Jacob's got a younger brother, Journey Fatu. He's been wrestling for about 3 years now. Once he hits his stride, I do expect really big things from him. I think right now that pro wrestling takes a backseat to a real life job, so that's why he doesn't get as much time to wrestle as he could. But from what he has done, he does look really good. Levi Shapiro, he does kind of an older, like an old school gimmick, kind of similar to like what Steve Corino did back in ECW back in the day. He's managed by, I'm trying to think of the guy, he's got the Wrestling with Regret.
Brian Zane, I believe.
Brian Zane, yes. He's managed by Brian Zane. I definitely see big things from him, hopefully, getting his big break at some point, especially with his gimmick, the throwback and stuff like that. So he's another one I definitely hopefully see big things from.
Nice, yeah. He's almost got like that Arn Anderson jacket going on, right? The red jacket.
Yep, that's him, yeah.
Who does he team with? Because I bought a couple APW shows about a year ago or so whenever Cody was making the loop. And I remember Levi Shapiro, Brian Zane, and then I feel like there was another guy in the team.
Buddy Royal.
Yes, that's it.
Buddy Royal ended up they split up. Buddy Royal ended up going to the New Japan Dojo. And he ended up leaving the dojo, so he wasn't with them anymore. I'm not sure what happened. Someone told me about it last night. Something real life kind of took over, so he ended up leaving the dojo. But he did come back at the APW show on Sunday, so yeah, I'm not sure where that's going right now, or if it's just something on the side, or if this is going to be a full-time thing or not. But no, Buddy Royal was a great talent as well.
Wow, now you talked earlier about kind of how your approach to posting on YouTube. And you've had headaches both posting on YouTube and Facebook. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of posting to either and any tips you'd have for people that plan on posting on either?
Yeah, don't post on Facebook. Don't post on Facebook. I'll tell you this right now. I had my Facebook account that I created in 2009. I thought, it's cool. Let me post directly on Facebook. And lo and behold, one day Sony came down on me on an upload. I think I uploaded that old Japanese TV show, the World Pro Wrestling or Weekly Pro Wrestling. They were doing a thing about the Von Erichs against Gino and Chris in the match from Texas Stadium. The match where like the car was on the line or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, the problem was that whatever song the Von Erichs came to the ring to, Sony owned the rights to it, and I ended up getting some kind of like major copyright strike from Facebook, and they ended up like suspending my account over it. So YouTube will work with you as far as if you upload something onto YouTube, because YouTube now has the option to where it can detect the music if it's copyrighted and remove it for you. Facebook doesn't have that option. So if it's owned music, they'll strike you over it. Just stay away from Facebook unless the video that you upload doesn't have any type of swing music whatsoever or background music or something. Because I've talked to promoters that have tried uploading, streaming a show, and they'll get a notice because one of their guys is coming to the ring to, real music, that, hey, we can't play this or something, and if you go with it, we're going to remove your channel. So I don't do it.
All right, I got a question for you. I'm kind of curious. We're talking about music. With music being so big in wrestling, is there a particular wrestler or wrestlers whose theme music you really loved or loved in the past?
Wow, that's a big question. Wow. God, I don't even know where to start on that.
Well, I mean, for me personally, like the Von Erichs to like, Kevin and, Stranglehold, like those were always some of my favorites.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Jeez, like the team of the Guapos in Mexico, Bestia Salvaje, Emilio Charles, and Shocker and Scorpio Jr., they used to come out to like the Backstreet Boys music, Backstreet Back All Night, just random songs like that where it's like, it's the song sticks with you and you hear it on the radio and it's the first thing that you think of is, oh my God, I remember when wrestlers used to come to the ring, like, what's that song from the Alan Parsons Project that Ricky Steamboat used to come to the ring to, that you hear at the Chicago Bulls games nowadays?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. That one got me big, man. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but yeah. I'm glad you remember that Ricky Steamboat used to come out to that. I try to tell people about that.
Yeah, Ricky Steamboat, that was a big one. I mean, even like nowadays, if I'm, flicking the channels and there's a basketball game, I know it's pretty much the Chicago Bulls one, but you see other teams are using it or other sports, and it's like, wow, I remember when Ricky Steamboat used to come to the ring to that, it's like,
that was my WrestleMania 3 moment right there. Actually, it was that song when he won, and it's all edited out now, but
yeah, everything is edited out. It's made ECW on the network unwatchable. I could deal with Smoky Mountain or a few of the other promotions or Mid-South because the music wasn't so entailed in it.
Right.
But with ECW, oh geez, forget it. That was like you had Mikey Whipwreck with Loser. You had, even to this date, if I'm flicking through my Amazon Prime music thing and Enter Sandman comes on, I get goosebumps, and I could just picture this guy banging a cane against his head while the whole crowd chants ECW. That moment stuck in my head forever.
I told Dave, if anybody's going to remember anything old, it's going to be Roy. You're big into wrestling history, and why is preserving wrestling history so important to you?
Can I talk about the Cauliflower Alley?
Yes, that I was actually going to ask you about that coming up, but let's roll it into one.
Okay. So earlier this year, I got a phone call from Brian Blair, who's the president of Cauliflower Alley. Many of you remember him from his days as the tag team as the Killer Bees. They needed somebody to run all the social media for the Cauliflower Alley Club, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll do this in a heartbeat. Running all those Facebook groups and dealing with 12-year-old kids who had to keep booting because they swore they know more than the rest of us for year on, year out before I just got tired and left all those groups. That's why Brian called me up and he's like, hey, can you take care of our social media? I'm like, oh yeah, I'd be more than happy to. Now, the Cauliflower Alley is a 501c organization, so they're nonprofit. What they do is that they raise money for the boys. Let's say, for example, Paul Orndorff, his home is about to get taken away. He gives us a call. He shows proof that, hey, I'm struggling, I'm going through a hardship right now, I need your guys' help. Cauliflower Alley will step up and help him out with his hardships so that he doesn't have to worry about that. We did that with him, we did that with Kamala. Not only, Kamala never again has to pay taxes on his home, that's taken care of for the rest of his life because he's at a certain age. There's a lot of wrestlers, Rico Constantino from Chuck and Billy, we helped him out a couple of years ago when he was going through some medical issues, and there's a lot of other ones that, HIPAA, they don't want to come forward and stuff like that, but a lot of the boys, as long as they can provide, as long as you've been in the business at least 3 years and and that you can show actual hardship and prove it, Cauliflower Alley will help up and step up and help you with that hardship financially. It's our way of trying to give back for all the years that you gave us in the business. Cauliflower Alley, we do 4 newsletters a year from our newsletter of the year. And then once a year, we have a big award ceremony, a banquet out in Las Vegas. Next year, it's in the Gold Coast Casino from April 27th to the 29th. And we've announced a few awards so far for it. We have a Luchador Award that we created a couple years ago for Blue Demon Jr., but we're going to do the second Luchador Award to Rey Mysterio Jr. at next year. And we're also doing the Iron Mike Mazurki Award winner to Medusa Michelli as well next year. And then we're still lining up a whole bunch more names. We got a Rising Stars Award we're giving to Madison Miles, Canadian girl that is, I believe she's out in England right now. Art Williams will be getting the referee award, and we got a few other ones that we're giving out. But the organization, this is something I'm really happy to be a part of, because it really does give back to the business and the guys and the ladies that, gave to us as fans and, are down on their times and need a little help. So that's something I'm just really happy to be a part of.
And you were also a part of getting money to Takayama a couple years ago when he was injured, right? Can you tell us a little about that?
That's right. I completely forgot about that. Okay. So there was a original drive that Eric Chominski did. He ran the Real Hero Archive for a bit where he puts up a bunch of Japanese videos because he had a way to tape them on TV currently. So what he did was he ran an account, like a PayPal account, where he raised money, and it ended up being about $7,000. And he's friends with Kevin Kelly, and he told Kevin Kelly what was going on, and Kevin Kelly had him meet with Minoru Suzuki backstage before New Year's Dash began, and Minoru Suzuki is still close friends with Takayama to this date. And a lot of little shows in Japan end up doing these little donation things like the Takayama Fund and stuff. Well, he ended up handing over the equivalent of $7,800 to Suzuki. Well, we tried to repeat that. We knew that Suzuki was going to be here in the States. And one of my best friends in real life is Harry Smith, Davey Boy Smith Jr., who at the time was actually in Suzuki-gun with Suzuki. So I told Harry what was going on, and Harry's like, well, we can just give it to him at the hotel. So we ran an event at a bar in Long Beach and ended up raising, I want to say around $1,000, and we ended up giving it directly to Minoru Suzuki at the hotel that night, and he ended up doing it for Takayama's medical funds when he got back to Japan.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I definitely wanted to share that with everyone. Dave, what did you think about that?
Yeah, that is awesome that you guys did that. And I was kind of thinking too, like, I don't know why when we were talking to Roy about guys that are should be top stars in the modern day top promotions right now. And you mentioned being friends with Harry Smith, and I'm thinking there's a guy who's got the look, who's just legitimate and everything. And I'm like, man, why is Harry not that guy right now in AEW or WWE? I know he's under contract with MLW, but I feel like he's somebody who should be making some big money.
No, I fully agree. I don't get what the deal is either. I don't. He has no ego issues. He's really trying to reinvent himself with doing the hybrid, the MMA style along with the pro wrestling style. He can be the cutest baby face in the world with the biggest smile, or he could be the meanest, growliest, come out and kick your ass type possible. I don't get why he's not a bigger star right now, but hopefully he'll get that. I'm not saying MLW is like lower the chain, because he is pretty happy where he's at right now, but I'm just surprised he's not even higher on that totem pole right now.
Yeah, I agree. I love MLW too. This is a guy who should be like, I feel like, in one of the top promotions making big money.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll get to see him, on the big stage again, other than his uncle getting attacked at the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Yeah, that was something. He laid in some shots there.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. That was great.
That was awesome.
You spoke earlier about the Cauliflower Alley Club. Is it hard to do that, upload videos, and balance a day job for you at all?
Oh, yeah. So, wake up, go to work, take care of what I need to do, come home, get my dinner ready, flip open the laptop, and... Wait, what? No, I don't wake up and download and go to work. A couple years, or a year or so ago, Bob Barnett, I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with him.
I've heard of him through the 605.
Yeah, he's a wrestling lawyer that ended up, because he lived in the LA area, same area as I, he used to drive down for all the Tijuana shows in the late 90s, early 2000s. Well, he ended up just like a year or so ago saying, I'm done with wrestling. And he called me up and he asked me if I wanted his collection. I'm like, well, yeah, because he saw all the uploading that I was doing. So not only did he give me all the handhelds of all the stuff that he went to, he also taped CMLL and AAA every week on the TV that it was on. So what I've been doing is going through his collection disc by disc, cutting out the matches and uploading them all onto YouTube one by one. So that's been the big project that I've been working on lately, is just all these CMLL matches. It's around 1999, and right now I'm going into late 2001. And this is stuff with Los Guapos and Los Infernales, and Santo's still there, Negro Casas. I mean, this stuff is just amazing to watch. I've been having a blast uploading these and watching these.
And that's pretty wild. Now, Roy, as you know, I talked to you about this last night, but I want to get it on the show. I'm a big fan of your podcast, Japanese Wrestling Classics with Roy Lucia. And I kind of wanted to know, what's the state of the podcast? Where is it at right now?
It's on hiatus. I did 7 or 8 episodes of it. I do believe it was 8. My last one being with Jungle Jim Steele. It's the only interview he ever gave, too, by the way. And now, for the next one, I contacted Tom McGee. And I tried to get Tom McGee on. We ended up, not getting a hold of each other again. And at that point, it was just we just couldn't make it happen. So I just was so mentally set on Tom McGee, I just decided to take a hiatus. Now, when I went out to Vegas for StarCast and I met Tom McGee, he fully remembered me. We talked for a while. He did tell me to get a hold of him, that we would do the episode. That was in May. It is currently November, and we still haven't had a chance to converse with each other. So once I get a hold of Tom McGee and I'm able to do that episode, because the funny thing is I actually have all the questions ready to go. And of all people, Chris Hero helped me with the questions, because he was wanting to, hear this interview as well. So he helped me to help shape up the questions and all that. So, yeah, once I finally get a hold of McGee and we ended up going, forward, then definitely the podcast will come back. I'm sure there's a few other people I can interview and stuff like that, but it was I was just so mentally set on Tom McGee that I really, didn't want to interview anyone else. And I did hit a lot of the gaijins, the top ones, that I wanted to interview people that hadn't been interviewed before. I mean, everyone and their mother up on the top level has interviewed Hansen, Funk, all the big gaijin names. People have already interviewed them. I wanted to hear the stories from the guys like Kurt Beyer and Joel Deaton and Richard Slinger. Richard Slinger, after the interview was over, thanked me for the interview. And I said, no problem, why? And he saw the other 2 interviews that I've given, it was an hour and a half of talking of stories about Terry Gordy, his uncle, instead of his stories. So I just wanted to present, the lower guys and to get their voice out. The one I did with Kurt Beyer was 3 hours long. And it wasn't even, obviously I talked a little about his dad growing up, but it was about his career. Yeah, that's something I'm actually very proud of, that I was able to do.
Roy, just a quick sidebar here. You said Jim Steele. Is that Jungle Jim Steele from the WCW days? Did some enhancement work for him, I believe?
That's him.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
That actually is what led us to get...
match with 911. That's him.
Oh, no shit.
That kind of idea led us to get Bob Cook not too long ago, because since we're not established, we wanted to get guys we could get, and we found that guys that might have been enhancement or underneath guys tell a lot better stories. They're a lot more forthcoming with things.
Absolutely. No, back in 94, 95, 96, I was sometimes hosting, sometimes co-hosting a show called Squared Circle Radio out in Sun Valley with a guy named James Boone, the Shadow Man. And we had a third co-host who was Bob Cook. And Bob is just amazing with the stories that he has. And Bob Cook's like, you'd see him all over the place on TV because, you know, he was enhancement on Raw, enhancement on WCW and stuff like that. And then I remember watching this shoot interview with Dustin Rhodes, and someone asked him, like, who's threw the best punch that you've ever been a part of? And immediately, with no hesitation, he's like, oh, Bob Cook. Bob Cook has the best left hand in the business, and if you're trying to get into the business, you need to watch Bob Cook matches in order to learn how to throw a punch. You know, I mean, it's like Lawler Dundee level punching there. It's insane how good his punches and stuff. So, yeah, kudos on Bob Cook. And, you know, he grew up around the Malenko school. So, you know, he's got the Waltman, the Bobby Blaze, the Carl Gotch stories. I mean, he's got some great stories to tell.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there anything you want to promote on the way out?
Check out my website, RoysWrestlingVault.com. On there, I have all my different YouTube channels. I have my newest uploads onto YouTube that I put up there. I also share some pictures throughout my life from wrestling shows I've been to. I also do a little historical thing from the SoCal Lucha scene in the 90s, where I've gone through the top Mexican newspaper, La Opinion, and I shared stories from each and every Lucha show that took place from 92, 93, and 94. So, yeah, just check out my website, RoysWrestlingVault.com. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, and apologize to Michelle for us keeping you so long.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one, Roy.
You too.
Guys, thank you for listening to the 531 here on YouTube this week. If you like what you hear, you can always find us on Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and on the Apple Podcast where you can subscribe and also give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate you listening. We want your feedback, 531, and if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, we also want you to let us know, and let us know what your 531 would be. Come up with a top 5 and let us know, and we'll tell you why you're wrong. And in order for us to do that, please contact us on Twitter. We're at Fans Working. Facebook page, Working Fans Wrestling Pod. Email workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. It's very important that you actually contact us on these platforms because we want this to be your interactive place to talk wrestling.
The Blue Thunder, Jay Freddy, Tokyo, USA, Pro Wrestling Worldwide, Pro Wrestler, and you are listening to the Working Fans Podcast. Yeah!
All right, folks, you're listening to the Working Fans Podcast. This is Dave, along with my producer, Joe. And we have on us as a guest today, top independent wrestler, Jay Freddy. Jay, how you doing?
What's going on? Good to be here.
Awesome, man. Jay, for anyone who doesn't know, why don't you give us a little background? How'd you break in, and what are some of your influences?
Right after high school, I knew I always wanted to be a professional wrestler. I mean, I've always known I wanted to be one since I was a kid. And at the time, I was in my senior year of high school, I was looking up schools to wrestle at, or to train at. And my original plan was to go to Ring of Honor school in Philadelphia. But then a company around New York called 2CW started to form. And I saw that the school, that the trainer was trained by Killer Kowalski. And obviously, you know, Killer Kowalski's a legend in this business, so
yeah,
it was only an hour from my house. So I went to a 2CW show, and I talked to some of the people after the show, and then December of 2006 is when I started my journey in this business.
Nice, nice. Now, what about some of your influences as far as wrestlers go?
Influences, you know, me being like a shorter, stockier guy, definitely like a Dynamite Kid, or the British Bulldog, or Dean Malenko, Bret Hart, Owen Hart. Definitely like those, like then when I really got into like Japanese wrestling, like guys like Misawa, Muda, you know, just guys who are, you know, a little bit different from everybody, but at the same time, you know, being a wrestler and having a lot of that, you know, especially for being in Japan, getting kind of like typecast into that Japan like esque role. Like, I definitely trying to draw a lot of influence from guys, you know, like Dynamite, Malenko, and stuff like that.
Now, you spoke of Japanese wrestling, and a lot of wrestlers kind of dream in working in Japan. How did you come about working over there, and what was your experience like in Japan?
Japan is definitely my home away from home. Like, I'm very excited to be returning there very soon. 2CW had a show with Tajiri on it back in 2014, and at the time, Tajiri had a company called WNC, Wrestling New Classic, over in Japan. And when he was booked over here in the States for 2 days for Living on the Edge weekend, he brought over two of his young boys, one being Usuke Kodama and the other being Ryan Fujiwara, a guy from Australia who Fujiwara gave him the last name, you know, because of the art bar and working with him. And the promoter at 2CW knew I've always wanted to go to Japan. Like, I talked about it. So I had matches with both of his young boys that weekend, and especially the match with Kodama was like the one. And after like they were interested, and they're actually going to bring a 2CW group over at WNC for like an invasion angle. And we're going to start a program with them. And a week before we were supposed to fly out, we got the news that Tajiri folded the company. And we're like, oh, you're kidding me. And then basically, like, a lot of those guys got absorbed into Wrestle One, Keiji Muda's company. So about, you know, kind of just keeping contacts and everything. And then a year later, an opportunity came about where Tajiri was booking with Wrestle One and had more of an office role, and asked if I wanted to go over for a learning excursion. I said absolutely. So my first tour, I was there 6 months, and it's crazy because like we debuted right at Korakuen Hall, which is crazy to me. You know, obviously, if you follow Japanese wrestling or any wrestling, Korakuen Hall is such an historic thing. You know, it's had everybody in there. And we were the opening 6-man tag match, and at the time, they had a stage, and the ramp would go to the ring like the old like WCW style, so and like the old like New Japan style. So I remember we heard our music, and we walked out, and the lasers were going off, and the smoke, and it was a sold-out show because the main event was the Great Muda, Tajiri, and the Great Kabuki all on one team. You know, like the Team Mist.
Jeez.
Yeah, the place was sold out. I just remember walking to the ring, getting in the ring, getting on the buckle. I'm just going like, holy cow, like what a way to start.
Right, yeah. I was just going to ask you, like, that had to be a trip meeting Muda, I imagine, even, right?
Oh, yeah, like I said, I mean, obviously he's a god, you know, and not only in like Japan, but here in America, you know. And I remember the first interaction I ever had with him, I was in a tournament. It was the Road to Keiji Muto tournament where the winner got to face Muto at Korakuen Hall, and I made it to the semis. And I remember after the opening match I had, he was sitting like at a table by the entrance. I remember walking back, and he looked at me and he said, "Good match." And I went, "Oh my god!" You know, like this is crazy.
Yeah.
And then after like getting to like the opportunities to like go out with the sponsors and go out with him to like a yakiniku, like a Korean barbecue place, and sit and talk to him. You know, he's a pretty genuine good dude.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on Muda myself in the NWA era, you know, hanging there, wrestling with Stinks. I'm definitely a big Muda fan. I'm just out of curiosity, how many dates a week are you working roughly right now? And, like, what are some of the other promotions you're working for?
The big ones I'm wrestling for, you know, obviously Beyond Wrestling, you know, the Uncharted Territory on every Thursday night on IWTV. It's been huge for me. But, like, I've been, you know, like, that's a big one. Limitless Wrestling up in Maine's been good. ESW out in Buffalo has been really well to me. Excite down in Binghamton. Basically, just been kind of trying to keep busy as much as I can. You know, like 2 shows a week. You know, obviously a little bit more for there. You know, like obviously like trying to branch out a little bit more outside the Northeast. But you know, I always still like to do like, you know, the smaller indies, or like the smaller little regional ones. You know, where, you know, because obviously you want to stay sharp, you know, and keep wrestling. You want to stay in a ring, you know. So. Yeah. But, yeah, try to keep as busy as I can. But, like, as far as, like, the big two, I'd say, like, Beyond and Limitless right now. And definitely looking forward to going back up to Canada and maybe getting involved with Smash or C4 up there as well.
Absolutely.
Nice. Now, Jay, we were really lucky to land this interview because, actually, for the last couple weeks, The thing that I've been bringing up that I've been most excited about in wrestling are the matches you've had with Brandon Thurston. Now, this week didn't necessarily end up like I thought, but I think the matches you guys have put on Uncharted Territory, it's a nice newer rivalry that I've seen. And I wanted to hear you talk a little bit about Beyond and about Brandon Thurston as well.
A lot of people don't really know the backstory with Thurston. Like, me and him have known each other well over a decade. Obviously, he started out in Buffalo. I started in Syracuse, and it was like a name. You hear each other's names in conversation, you know what I mean? Like, there's a time, like, around, like, that 05, 06, time, that's when, like, okay, there's these two young guys who are breaking in, they're having these matches, and finally, with Uncharted Territory, so we've always just kind of crossed paths, so we got booked in that first match with each other, and obviously we have a very similar style of working, we both like the Japanese style, we both like English style, like you go in there, it's going to be a chess match with somebody like that, and that first match is, it was our first match on Uncharted Territory, and I haven't been back with Beyond in a minute. I had a couple injuries that kind of kept me out. So I knew for me, especially now with the explosion of wrestling on so many media platforms, and there's so much of it out there, and Uncharted Territory's got a lot of buzz, and I've been with Beyond Wrestling on and off since 2014, so I kind of took that opportunity as like, I've been doing this for 13 years, still is like a make or break moment, you know what I mean? Where it's like, all right, I'm going to go out and I got to have this match, and we're either going to go up from here or we got to go back to the drawing board and figure it out. But that first match came off so well and so hard hitting, and then I was fortunate to get the win that led to the second match. And then, Brandon, obviously being, I'll give the credit where it's due, he's intelligent. He studied up on the tape, and then he pulled out the second one, and then out of nowhere I could just change it. And I don't know what's going on with him, but obviously, the last two times you've seen each other, he's kind of been a dirty little prick. So, definitely, it's on now. This is personal. This is more than just seeing who's the best in the region now. These are two guys who have been involved with the upstate New York wrestling scene for well over decades. So now it's like, who's the king of the mountain at this point?
I know a lot of the times on this podcast, we talk about having day jobs and how we're kind of fitting this in. And Uncharted Territory last week, I knew you guys were having the rematch. So I'm getting all my stuff done at night so I can sit down and watch the match. And then when it ended like it did, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. But I know it's only going to lead to something better. And you've had a lot of solid matches and Beyond. That's probably around where you first caught my eye. And every time I've seen you, it's been a solid effort, hands down.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's always my goal in any company, whether it be a Beyond Wrestling or a Limitless or even like a local ESW or PWR in Pennsylvania or wherever. If I'm there, I only know one speed, and that's 100. I only know one effort, that's max effort. It doesn't matter who I'm wrestling. Like you're gonna get the best that I can give you that night. And this whole thing with Thurston, like I said, I've noticed, especially he's trying to play mind games, but at the same time, I know how to tap into his brain, and it's been working. He's basically giving me what I want, and that's another match. Like for weeks he was saying he was done with me. He was saying, I'm over it, and then I know, like I can see it in his eyes when he comes in the ring, and I stare right at him. I know he knows he can't beat me, and obviously look what he's resorted to. So.
Now, Jay, just out of curiosity, who are some of the people that have been really good to you and kind of helped you along in the business that maybe you weren't expecting, besides bringing you in, like, as you've been wrestling?
As far as probably my big brother in pro wrestling has definitely got to be Eddie Edwards. I remember the first time I wrestled him, I was only 6 months into wrestling.
Wow.
And I was originally in a 6-man tag that night. And Eddie was supposed to wrestle Antonio Thomas that night. And the night before, Antonio Thomas got hurt. So I'm at the building, and the promoter of 2CW, his name's Josh, he came up to me. And Josh is very joking, like he'll come up to me like, hey, how you doing, buddy? And I'm like, I'm doing all right. I was like, how do you feel about your 6-man tonight? I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm loosening up. He goes, well, you're wrestling Eddie Edwards tonight. Good luck. I thought And I was like, okay. I mean, I thought he was kidding. You know,
Right.
Joke. And then I got to the back, and then I saw the lineup, and I saw that Antonio Thomas' name was crossed out. My name was written on a Sharpie. I was like, huh, okay. You know, and then I just remember wrestling Eddie, and that was probably the, you know, when you're young into wrestling, that's kind of like the test, I guess. But definitely earned his respect after that, and he's been a guy who's really, if I need anything, I can go talk to him. You know, if any advice I can send him a match, he can send me back his 2 cents. And obviously it shows how I work. Him and I are very similar, you know. Another guy is Davey Richards. Basically, I was kind of like the Wolves, like young boy for a while, for a little bit. Because I remember going to Ring of Honor, watching a live event, and that's when Davey first came into the company. And I was kind of like, wow, you know, like, you know, this dude's great, you know, and I could relate, you know, being shorter and stockier or whatever, and how and the same influence. And then, like I said, the Wolves were the 2 CW champions at the time, and Eddie went over to Noah for a tour, and I knew Davey was coming in. I looked at, and again, there was one of those situations where I went to the promoter and I said, hey, Davey's coming in singles. I need this, you know, because at the time it was around 2010, so I've only been a few years into wrestling. At that time, Davey was red hot. You know, that's when he was wrestling Seth Rollins, Tyler Black, you know, for the title, and everybody. So I was like trying to seize that moment. It was like, okay, you know, like this is where, like, you know, another situation I said earlier, this is where we either go back to the drawing board, or this is where I can see mentally if I can do this, you know. And that match was probably the most brutal physical match I've ever had. The building was 105 degrees with the body heat in there, and we went a good 25 minutes, and I actually picked the win up. And after the fact, you know, Davey invited me out to dinner, and then next thing you know, I'm on Ring of Honor TV wrestling Eddie Edwards in the 5-minute Wolf Hunt, you know. And then it was Davey giving me that door to go to Ring of Honor there when they were doing the HDNet TV, and really, you know, riding with him and training with him in a gym and learning from those guys, you know. So those two are definitely 2 huge influences on me as far as in wrestling. A peer I love traveling with, Dick Justice is probably like my best friend in the business and outside of wrestling. Like, I just hung out with him here over the weekend. I haven't seen him in a minute. Him and I have been on the road so much together where it's pretty funny when we can complete each other's sentences, you know, where if one starts a conversation, the other one's picking it right up, or we're both on the same wavelength, you know. And that's just, and in this business, you know, like I said, you have a lot of acquaintances, you travel a lot of people, but you really have a select few of people you really can call like a close personal friend, and he's one, and those 3 are definitely like the big 3 for me.
I was just curious. I was watching a match with you the other night in preparation for this, and I noticed you have a tattoo on your hand. Is there any significance to that?
Yeah, that represents my grandfather.
Oh, cool.
Like 2 years ago, my grandfather died of cancer. He's 88 years old, you know. It's a long life, you know, and I was going to go up on a Wednesday to see him, you know, because we all knew it was, you know, time was short. I got home on Tuesday morning. I was actually doing an extra spot for WWE, and I got in New Jersey, and I got home Tuesday morning, and I said, you know, I was really going to crash. I drove all night. I was going to go right to bed. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go see him. And then I went over and I saw him. I sat alone with him, held his hand, you know, said my piece, you know, said everything. And then literally like a minute after I pulled out the driveway, he went. So I was like the last one to see him alive, you know what I mean? Or in a live state, I guess. So, and then with the grandkids, we had no idea he did this. I was like 4 weeks later, my dad sends me a text, goes, hey, your grandfather left you something. And I still keep the envelope because he wrote my name out right on it, and I still keep it. And he had in there a savings bond that he started from when I was born, you know, and we had no idea he did this for the grandkids. So it was like, oh my God. So I cashed it in, and then I obviously took some of the money from that, and I got the ink done. So that's what that represents.
Wow, so it sounds like he was really important to you, and that tattoo was really a way of honoring him.
Yep, like he was the first one in my family, you know, to ever have a home. You know, like he came up, obviously back in the 20s and 30s, you know, like rough times with depression and all that. And he was a family man through and through. He met my grandmother. He's actually a semi-professional basketball player, and actually a lot of a lot of teams like the Boston Celtics and the Syracuse Nationals, which are now the 76ers, basically were scouting him and offered him a contract. He played on a lot of the traveling teams, and it's cool because like you see his old scrapbook, like he played against like all the gimmick teams too. Like there's a team of like traveling nuns they play, or
No kidding.
like the Cincinnati Redheads, which are actually in the Basketball Hall of Fame. They got a display. But at the time, you know, he had 3 kids with number 4 on the way, and it's funny because like my father's side's kind of like the Hart family. You know, like there's 7 kids. You know, so there's a lot. And my grandfather was always traveling doing his thing, but then my grandmother finally put her foot down. It's like it's either basketball or your family, you know. And obviously he chose his family, and he got a job at the telephone company and went from being a grunt, you know, a laborer, to basically retiring when Verizon bought out Bell Telephone as regional manager, you know. So he's but he also did so much for the community, you know. Like he was the exalted ruler of the Elks Lodge, put on like the charity free throw shoot that a lot of places do, a lot of community events, you know. So I look at him as far as an example, as far as to be like to be like the man he was, you know what I mean? Like to be sort of, if I could be even like half the man him or like my father are, you know, I think I'd be doing all right.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's really cool that you actually got to say goodbye, because near the end, like, I was close with my grandma, but near the end, she went into a nursing home, so I don't think I ever really had that goodbye moment with her. It was always like, I'll see you again, but you got that finality, and it seems like it gave you a good example to go forward and emulate in the world.
Exactly, that's actually, you said that, because I was going to say that. Like, you see somebody like that, you know, it's kind of like, wow, like that's the example as far as how to be, you know, a good person and good to your family and good to other people. Like one thing I admired is like he'd walk into like, say, like the local grocery store, the local donut shop to grab donuts for camp or whatever, or he'd go to like a store, but he'd walk in and he knew everybody by name. Even if you ever met him one time, you know what I mean? That's something I try to do, like when I go into a locker room. I always try to remember everybody and say everybody by name. Like, you know, I go, hey, Ace Romero, and hey, you know, Ace Austin, or whoever's all in there, you know what I mean? I try to acknowledge them by name, you know, so I think that's a very respectful thing. I think people remember that. Yeah,
that's good core values, man. I think a lot of that has changed in the world we live in between social media and texting. Not to go on a soapbox, but it's nice to like kind of keep those old schools of just, you know, remembering names, saying hello to people, basic politeness.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, too, one other thing I did want to ask you, do you have like a favorite opponent, maybe, like somebody who really brings out the best in you?
Favorite opponent? Wow. Definitely, I'll rattle off a few names. Eddie Edwards, obviously, number one. Like I said, him and I have had dozens of matches, and just, you go in there with somebody, you know your game is going to be up. You know, or you go to a match like that, you walk away being better. Keiko Kodama in Japan, like him and I wrestled for the Wrestle One Cruiserweight title in Cork and Hall, and that's actually one of my proudest moments and one of my proudest matches. Tyson Dukes in Canada, wicked awesome old school 90s style wrestling match, and you know, like we both went out and did that very Bret Hart, Mr. Perfect, King of the Ring, SummerSlam style match. It was awesome. I'll give the devil his due, Brandon Thurston. Definitely, you know, you're going to go in there, it's going to be bell-to-bell action and that King's Road style of wrestling. I had a match with Rich Swann one time, and it was wicked awesome. Like, and I just wrestled there at Fox CSW. It was awesome. Like, I like wrestling a lot of people that are, like, either similar or a polar opposite of me. Like, for example, like, I like wrestling the heavyweights. You know, like, there's a wrestler a couple years ago, his name was Brute Van Slyke. In New York. I liked wrestling him because it was like that old school, like Stan Hansen versus Dynamite, or like even like a Bret versus like Diesel, you know, or Sid, you know, like
sure,
like that's the story, you know. Like I love wrestling the heavyweights or guys twice my size, you know, or even like the luchadors or guys who can do a lot of the high spots in the rolls, because again, another contrast of style, you know. Like my job is to ground them and not let them get going, and obviously when they get going, I got to play catch up, so chase the rabbits. So definitely matches like that. Like I said, I like to think I'm pretty well versed as far as like who I can go in the ring with, but those are just some of the names that come to mind.
Yeah, one thing too, Jay, I noticed that Like, I love all your matches. You're very serious. You have great competitive matches. But I noticed you can do some comedy matches once in a while, too. I saw some stuff with you and Puff wearing a hard hat, drinking a beer. It was interesting. It was pretty good stuff.
Oh, yeah, that was the Thick Boys up
Yes.
in Maine. Basically, like, John Silver's another one of my good friends in wrestling. Because, like, me and John just click. Because, like, sometimes we just be a couple of goofballs.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, they put us together, and the promoter was like, I kind of want you guys to be, like, you know, like a serious ass-kicking team, you know, like the American Bulls or whatever. We're kind of like, okay. But then, like, sure, like, we can do that, but, like, we also have personality, you know what I mean? Like, we're not just, like, two short, vanilla,
Yeah.
wrestlers. Like, we also, like, be ourselves, you know, and obviously now with, like, we kind of tapped into, like, that whole, like, Barstool Sports, like, a lot of, like, some, like, that goofy bro stuff, and him and I were just ping-ponging ideas off each other, like I said, you know, maybe we should wear, like, denim vests, and he said maybe we should wear ball caps, and then we just kept, like, yeah, this is great, you know, and then obviously, like, Puff got involved with being, like, our pledge. You know what I mean? Like, how every frat has, like, pledge week and all that. So
That's awesome.
And obviously, the pledge is kind of, you know, messed up here and there and cost us matches. So then you have the one frat brother who's hot at the pledge, and then you have the one that's the peacemaker trying to make everything work, and then that's where we're at right now. So we're interested to see where that story goes.
Now, it sounds like you've had a lot of experience between the U.S. and Japan. What championships have you held in your time in the business?
I've held the 2CW heavyweight title, the Top Rope Promotions heavyweight title out of Massachusetts, the Fall River area. I've held the Upstate Pro Wrestling heavyweight title out in Rochester. A big one for me in Japan, I was 1/3 of the UWA six-man tag team champions with a wrestler by the name of Kumagoro and Jiro Ikemen Kurosho. Actually, he just signed to WWE. That's the name to watch out for. That kid's going to be a superstar. He's the one, if you ever followed Japan, like, he's super popular. He's one that always wears, like, the jacket, comes out with, like, the big introduction, like, takes him 10 minutes to get in the ring. Like, he's awesome. And he's so young, too. And he's just incredible. But those are some of the titles I've held.
I'll have to keep an eye out for him. Now, what was it like winning a championship in Japan? Because it's your dream to get over there. And when you're a champion there, that's got to be, like, extra special.
Oh, I cried like a baby.
Nice.
It was awesome. And the team we beat Kazayashi, Shuji Kondo, and Soya Manabu, so a really good team.
Wow, some names.
And there's another guy, one of my favorite opponents is Kazayashi. You know, obviously being a fan of his since WCW.
Yeah.
Like, getting to wrestle him, like, for my first two tours, like, I'd be in multi-man matches. Like, him and I were just married to each other as far as wrestling each other. You know, because we're like the speed of the team, we're like more like the technical guys of each team. But beating them guys it was in Chiba, and the crowd was like 1,500 and it was packed. And when we won the belts, no one expected us to win, and we won them. And then the place went nuts, and there's just like a holy cow, like, this actually happened. Like, I would have never thought in my wildest years, coming from small Watertown, New York, that I'd be in Japan winning a title. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, and what's it like sometimes wrestling guys that you came up watching wrestling? That's got to be a bit of a mind fuck sometimes.
Oh, it is. It's surreal, you know, but I think, like, once you get past the aura of it, you know, and really get going and getting comfortable, that it's like, oh, okay, like, then you just dial it in, you know. But obviously, yeah, like, you have that first moment of, like, oh, wow, like, this is Kazayashi, or oh my God, this is Minoru Tanaka, or like. But then obviously, you know, once you get in the ring, you know, you wipe your feet off, step between the ropes, it's go time. He's just another opponent at that point.
Just wondering too, you've done a lot already. What are some of your goals left that you want to do in wrestling?
Oh, I definitely got a ton. Like I said, I mean, I'd love to go out to like PWG in California. Like that's definitely been on the bucket list. And you know, obviously support like Canada shows, like Mexico, obviously Europe's the hotbed right now, like England, Germany. Like, I would just like to keep traveling the world, get better, wrestle as much as I can. And obviously now with, you know, a lot of places offering contracts and on TV and stuff like that, I mean, someday ink deal, you know, but until now I'm just trying to enjoy the ride while I'm on it right now.
Damn right.
Nice. And we talk a lot about, with the WWE and other companies signing so much indie talent, kind of who's going to be the next big thing. And here at the Working Fans Podcast, at least I've been pushing for Jay Freddy. Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. We thank you very much for joining us. And before you go, can you kind of give us any upcoming dates, where people can find you, anything you want to plug?
Absolutely. My Instagram is J_Freddy. Same with my Twitter at J_Freddy. This Saturday I'll be at Excite Wrestling in Binghamton. It'll be myself and Slick Wagner Brown, the Kowalski guys. It's another tag team I'm in. Obviously, him training under Killer Kowalski, and me having the Kowalski rub, and knowing each other for 15 years, we decided to combine as a team, and we're a really good team clicking right now. We're going after the Excite Tag Team Championships. That's this Saturday. I will be on Beyond Wrestling Uncharted Territory on November 7th, so tune in for that. And then on November 9th, I will be in Erie, Pennsylvania for Pro Wrestling Rampage.
Jay, you're the man. Thanks a lot, bud.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Hey, Jay, have a great night.
Guys, thank you for listening to the 531 here on YouTube this week. If you like what you hear, you can always find us on Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and on the Apple Podcast where you can subscribe and also give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate you listening. We want your feedback, 531, and if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, we also want you to let us know. And let us know what your 531 would be. Come up with a top 5 and let us know, and we'll tell you why you're wrong. And in order for us to do that, please contact us on Twitter. We're at Fans Working. Facebook page, Working Fans Wrestling Pod. Email workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. It's very important that you actually contact us on these platforms because we want this to be your interactive place to talk wrestling.
Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Anderson, and you are listening to the Working Fans Podcast.
Hey, everybody, it's the Working Fans Podcast. This is Dave, and today we got a very special guest, former Money in the Bank winner, former U.S. champion, former Impact Heavyweight champion, has his own wrestling school, Mr. Ken Anderson. Ken, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm great. Running around, you know how it goes. Got a little work today, so.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's just get, one thing about you that jumps off the page to me, first time I saw you with the microphone gimmick and everything, I just thought, man, this guy is super charismatic and comfortable. And usually I ask people what got him into wrestling or broke into wrestling, but with you, I'm kind of curious, were you just always a good talker?
It was something I always sort of gravitated to. I remember being a very little kid, and I always did well with speech class and stuff like that. I was always into acting, even when I wasn't acting for a school play or something like that. I was, I would watch movies and I would recite the movies to my friends and family, and I would tell jokes, and so it was something that I always just sort of. And then when I fell in love with wrestling, I fell in love with guys like Steve Austin and The Rock and people that were very good talkers. And then when I got into the business, that was something that I focused on. And any time that I could possibly get an opportunity to speak on a microphone or in front of a camera, I always practiced it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You definitely felt very comfortable. Even the first time I saw you in WWE, which, I mean, when you got to WWE, how many years had you been working?
I've been working for about 6 years at that point.
6 years? Okay, so you've been a little bit, yeah.
And it was I had done all these tryouts, or they're not really even tryouts. WWE doesn't technically have tryouts, but I get opportunities to go work as an extra every few months. And I did that for 5 years or so. And by the time I had my last one of those before I got hired, I remember I just felt like I had been in the business long enough, and I had enough stuff in my back pocket from promos that I had cut and the experiences that I had, that when I got there, I felt like, the whole way there, the whole ride getting there, I just wanted to be there.
Right.
And then when I got there, I was actually glad that it had taken me so long because, I had a ton of experiences, both negative and positive, and those negatives helped mold me into the person, that you saw. Absolutely.
I mean, I think that goes with life anyway, right? I mean, you take these negatives that we endure and you become a better person for it a lot of times.
Yep. I don't know that he wasn't necessarily the one that should get credit for this quote, but I've heard that people say Thomas Edison said, I know 200 ways not to make a light bulb.
Yeah, and I tell people all the time, like, I mean, I have my own business, like delivering bread, and I used to work in stores, and I've been a manager of people, and I always said, I learn more from making mistakes sometimes than actually doing well. Like, I don't learn much from doing well, but when I screw up, I go, oh, okay, I remember not to do that again.
Exactly. You have to. I mean, for the most part, every successful person out there, unless they're successful because they inherited a bunch of money from their family, and that's it, most of those people they've had multiple failures, and they've tried and failed and tried and failed. Every time they fail, they grow closer to understanding what they need to do to not fail.
And I would say timing has a lot to do with things sometimes in life, too.
Totally. The timing, speaking of the timing issue, Dr. Tom used to say that luck is where preparation and opportunity meet.
Right.
And the harder you work, the luckier you seem to get. If you put yourself in positions and the more times you put yourself in those situations, and as long as you continue to prepare and you continue to try to better yourself, one of these days you will get an opportunity and you'll be in the right place at the right time, and then suddenly you're an overnight sensation, you're an overnight success, even though, like I said, it took me 6 years to get there.
Right. I was actually, because I was doing a little research. It looked like, you can confirm this or not, like one of the big things that helped you was running into Paul Heyman. Like, he was a big supporter of yours?
He really was. And I had met Brock Lesnar on one of my little extra deals for the WWE, and we took a liking to each other. And he actually, because I live in Minnesota, and I lived in Minnesota at the time, he said, I want to get you in touch with Brad Rheingans. So he sort of helped to connect those dots. Brad Rheingans has trained, a ton of WWE, the Nasty Boys. He trained, had a hand in training Kurt Hennig. He had a hand in training Joe Hennig.
Yeah, legit guy too.
Yeah, right, exactly. He was an amateur wrestler that was supposed to go to the 1980 Olympics until President Carter boycotted the Olympics. But anyway, he connected those dots. So I went, and at that time I had been in the business for about 3 years, but I went there and sort of worked on polishing my craft a little more. And then, so when Paul Heyman saw me working in the ring one day at a Raw taping, he pulled me aside and said, I like what I see. Who trained you? And I said, Brad Rheingans trained me. Well, I said, first I got trained by 2 guys in Green Bay, and then I went to Brad's school, and he immediately lit up, and he was like, I love Brad. I know Brad. Obviously Brock was a Brad Rheingans guy.
Right.
And, that sort of started a relationship between us. And I remember him pulling for me that day. He wanted me to get in the pre-tape room and do some promos. He wanted me to cut a babyface and a heel promo. And he actually sat down and worked with me for like 30 to 45 minutes on examples of what I can say and how I can portray it. This is what he's looking for. It ended up not happening because normally at Raw or SmackDown or pay-per-view, there's a million other things. And there's all these moving parts, and it just didn't fit. There were other things more pressing. So I didn't do it, but we sort of kept in touch. And then when I finally did get hired by the WWE, and then about 5 or 6 months after they fired Jim Cornette,
right,
Paul Heyman came down, and then Paul immediately pulled me aside and said, I'm a fan of yours, I've been a fan of yours, we're going to do stuff. And he said, you're going to be on TV shortly. And then 5 weeks later, I was on TV. I was making my debut for SmackDown.
It's kind of like, besides, I think we're touching on all the keys to success here. Work hard, bide your time, take negatives into positives. And besides time, and I think networking too, meeting the right people and staying in contact,
It absolutely, being successful in this business, as is the case with every other business, who you know and those relationships that you have with people. If you're known as being a dick, you're probably not gonna get work.
Right, absolutely.
Unless you are just so special and
right,
you're a monster, or you have some sort of talent that nobody else can possess.
I think that's a big thing, because I think a lot of times as fans, we look at this like this dream larger than life thing, which it is, but it also is a job. Like, you do have to apply like regular things, like you have to get along with people, you have to show up, you have to be dependable. Like, those are all qualities that you still need, I would imagine, to be a successful pro wrestler, like anything.
I feel like throughout my life, throughout my career, I've been in the business now for 21 years.
Yeah.
I run into people all the time, and family members, friends, ex-family members, ex-friends that all seem to think that because my job is cool and it's not the normal 9 to 5, and I get to travel and I get to occasionally when I'm in a town and I have some time to kill, I can go out to eat and experience the local culture and do cool things that they think that it's not actually a job, that I'm just out dicking the dog
right.
all the time. And at the end of the day, this is a job. First and foremost, This is my career. This is a profession. And you have to act professionally, and when you're trying to get a job, you have to present yourself professionally too. I think some people, Tommy Dreamer used to talk, because Tommy Dreamer was in the office at WWE. Yeah, WWE. And he said that he used to get some just atrocious videos and letters from people that looked like, a 3-year-old had stuck a crayon up his butt and squatted over a piece of paper and wrote out this statement and cobbled together this crappy video and sent it to him, and was expecting to potentially get a sniff.
Wow.
It's just not the way it goes.
No. One thing I was curious to ask you about, again, we're all human, and like you guys come off like larger than life, but like, this is your career, but it's also kind of a dream job, I imagine too. And it's like, you're meeting like a guy's like Vince McMahon. I gotta imagine first time in is that intimidating, or is that not you? Are you intimidated still a little bit by that?
So I remember, do you know who Dick Marcinko is?
No, I do not know that name actually.
So he was the leader or the developer of SEAL Team 6.
Oh, okay.
So he was the guy that had all this experience and who put together this, the elite of the elite, basically.
Right.
And one of my friends that I used to work with had told me that he met him at one point. He said, he said the hair stood up on the back of his neck and he sort of just looks through you. And he has this just presence about him. And honestly, the first time I met Vince McMahon, not like the death stare or anything like that. I don't think he's seen a lot of death in his life.
Right.
He hasn't done bad things to bad people, but it was that just sort of, this guy he's something else.
Right.
And I think that's the case with a lot of people who are uber successful.
Mm-hmm.
You meet The Rock, anybody who's ever met The Rock just oozes charisma out of every single pore. He just presents himself, he holds himself like, he's a larger than life human being.
Yeah, they own the room.
Exactly.
You went to Impact Wrestling after WWE, and I was going to say, you got in there at a pretty decent time, too. There was a lot of talent. Like, I was looking back, like, Hulk Hogan, I want to say, was there at the time, Kurt Angle. That was a very large roster.
We had Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Ric Flair, Mick Foley, and then you've got like the Samoa Joes and AJ Styles, and Eric Young's, all the originals, Bobby Roode, Christopher Daniels, and Frankie Kazarian, and then you had all these, like Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy came in shortly after I was there. It was huge.
Yeah, and they put the world title on you at that time too. I mean, that had to be a pretty good feeling.
They did. It was a good, and at the time, like looking back on it, I was an idiot. And I sort of squandered those opportunities, I think, because I was in a kind of a bad place at the time, and I kind of fallen out of love with the wrestling business. And I was in this sort of woe is me. I was bitter that I had been fired from WWE. I remember after I won the title, I did an interview, and somebody asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years or something like that? I said, at the time, if I'm still wrestling in 5 years, somebody please shoot me. And then I went on to say something to the effect of, basically, I said that people in the wrestling fight and backstab each other over this title that's actually just a prop,
Right.
Things like that, so.
Yeah, you weren't in the best spot, obviously, at the time, but you got better.
I did.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't feel that way now.
Yeah, no, I could tell. And, that's good, man. I think, that's like you said, we all got to go through that stuff in life sometimes. One thing I noticed, this is going to be a little random. I was always curious about it because I remember your theme music in WWE had kind of this rock feeling to it. And I actually, in doing a little preparation for this, I looked at your Facebook and you had filled out this thing and you said, I don't usually do this. And it was like one of those like favorite bands, last concerts you've been to. And have you always been a big classic rock kind of guy?
Honestly, I like everything.
Nice.
I really do. I really like everything, but I guess 80s, 90s hair metal is my Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Ozzy Osbourne, Queensryche.
You're born in 76, right?
I was.
Yeah, I am too. So that's why I took notice of that. So that's
Yeah, but if you look at those concerts that I wrote down, I mean, it's a pretty eclectic
Yeah.
mix. So,
I mean, you did have Beyonce in there, but you had mentioned that the wife was a fan, I believe.
oh yeah, Beyonce. She loves Beyonce. So
Yeah.
like if Beyonce ever comes, we're going.
Right. Hey,
My radar, I have my feelers out there for Beyonce tickets when she comes around.
what was it like? I meant to ask you this too. What was it like working with Hulk Hogan? How was that?
It was amazing, and looking back on it, it was more amazing than I kind of realized at the time, I think. And again, I was in that sort of bad place. So at the time, it was just like, this is a job, like any other job. Not a big deal. I didn't really realize, I just a few months ago, or about a year ago, I was trying to find one of my matches on the WWE network to show my students, and then I kind of got lost on this rabbit hole of all these matches that I had, and I honestly, I had forgotten about Shawn Michaels and wrestling Ric Flair, all the times I wrestled The Undertaker.
Right.
It's kind of crazy, but it's just strange that at the time, I didn't really think much of it. It's just a job.
Yeah, right. You're in the moment, whether, like you said, you may be in a bad place. And yeah, you can certainly, as you get older and you look back, I'm sure you develop a definite appreciation for that, because how many people have done that,
Yeah, definitely.
So now you're with NWA Power. I grew up wrestling fan. I loved WWE. I was a Northeastern guy, but God, NWA was right there for me. Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes. How's it feel to be working with the NWA and Billy Corgan and that group?
It's pretty awesome, and I really love working for Billy and Dave. I've had good experiences across the board working with those guys in the past. One of my favorite things that I've ever done was work a program where Billy Corgan was basically in charge of creative on that, and so I'm really glad that the company is doing as well as it is right now, and that people are enjoying the product, and that people, I think having the 1 hour program leaves people wanting more, and that's a good place to be in.
100%. I will say, as a fan, NWA Power is right up there now. Like my favorite shows personally are NXT, it's Wrestling Heavy, and NWA Power. And another show I like is MLW. And one of the reasons why NWA and MLW is they're about an hour long. Easy digest, fun show.
I feel like for some reason in this day and age, you can't just go to a 2 hour movie anymore, or an hour and a half long movie. Everything has to be 2.5 hours. And it's exhausting to me.
Right.
And I say that knowing perfectly well that I will sit down and binge watch. Like the latest one we watched on Netflix was You. I watched 8 episodes in a day. But just, I don't know. There's something about, I'm a firm believer in less is more.
Yep.
More is less. And I wish that, I sort of feel like it's not just wrestling, it's just entertainment is really oversaturated right now. And just give people a taste of it. Let them want more. Don't always have to give them, we don't need 4 hours a week.
Oh, yeah.
One show, I don't think.
No, I agree totally. Actually, a little off topic. I'm somewhat of a Star Wars nerd too, and The Mandalorian, which we like, it's a good show. It came out once a week, and I had younger friends, again, I'm 43, who were complaining, saying, "Oh, we got to wait a week to watch this?" And I'm like, I love that.
Yeah. I long to the days that I remember I used to watch WWE Raw.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was like that was the only thing really on TV. I think there was Nitro was on. I didn't really watch Nitro at the time. But I remember something would happen at the end of Raw that would be a major cliffhanger, and you would no, what's going on? I remember seeing Austin going up the ramp after one of his successes, and Shawn Michaels came out and super kicked him on the top of the ramp, and you left like, oh my God, what's going to happen next week? And so all week we would go to work and we would talk about what's going to happen next week. And then when they introduced SmackDown, I remember at the time at work, wrestling was just huge. I was a nuclear security officer, so we had to sit in a box for 12 hours a night, and that's all we would do is phone each other and talk about wrestling and talk about other stuff. But then SmackDown came around, I remember a bunch of the guys just sort of falling off. I can do Monday nights, but, my wife hates it when she already doesn't like it, and she's not going to let me watch 2 nights a week. So then they would start, and at the time the brands weren't split. The split wouldn't come for a really long time after that. So it was you'd watch Raw, and then if you didn't watch SmackDown, by the time Monday rolled around again, there had been a bunch of stuff that took place that you would sort of be in the dark about. I think a lot of people started falling off then.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, it's just overkill. The Monday Night Wars were successful. They were awesome. They were competitive. But also that was the beginning of having a pay-per-view every month, too.
That's another thing I've never been a big fan of. I mean, the pay-per-views just sort of get watered down. And I remember being at WWE at the time, it was like we would do a pay-per-view, and then the next day we would already be like scrambling to decide what we were going to do, how we were going to promote the next pay-per-view, because the next pay-per-view is a month or sometimes even less than a full month, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the 4 pay-per-views a year. I think that gives you 3 months to really build storylines for the next one. Less is more again.
Yeah, I agree. Sweet spot. I think UFC and MMA sometimes, I'm a fan of that too. And they have the same issue now too. There's a pay-per-view every month, and I wish it was just back to a big fight feeling. And wrestling has that big fight feeling too sometimes. And to me, like when you get that electricity in the air, there's just nothing better. And that's hard to do when you're doing it every month.
However, it's not lost on me that, what do I know? I'm not a billionaire.
Right. They're making money.
Doing something right. It works. But.
Well, we'll go over a couple more quick questions. I'll let you go soon. One thing I'm curious about this day and age, obviously, maybe in the last 10 years, social media. I mean, how much are you using that now compared to, say, when you, were first in WWE? I got to imagine, you must use social media a lot more now.
You have to. You just like it or leave it, or, love it or hate it. You have to have it nowadays.
Yeah.
So I hate having to constantly self-promote. I think it kind of pisses me off that we're in this age of, look at me. It's very narcissistic. There's, basically everybody's taking pictures of what cool stuff they're doing and shouting at the world, look at the cool stuff that I'm doing that you're not doing. Look at all the fun that I'm having without you.
Yeah.
And I know it's not all that, but it just kind of sucks that all altruism sort of gone out the window. If I give money to a homeless person on the street, I don't need to tweet about it. I don't need to tell somebody about it. Just do it.
Right.
But, I realize that, stuff like that also raises awareness for other people to think, oh, I should probably do that too. So I get it, but, I'm torn.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm the same way. I mean, I think there's a lot of good that can come with it, but there's also I was telling somebody, you can probably relate to this too. When you're a kid, you insult somebody or you get into a fight or you pick on somebody and you're going to have a reaction. You might feel bad. You might go, oh, I shouldn't do that. Nowadays, kids just type something online, social media, make fun of that kid, walk away, feel great. They're not learning any remorse. They're not learning anything. It's just it does create a toxic environment as well.
It does. And I realize that it's not all that way. And there's a lot of positives out there, but I think there's a spotlight that shines on that negativity.
Right.
A lot. And those people the trolls that just go on and say just the most vicious, awful things to other human beings. Yeah, like you said, there's no accountability. And words hurt sometimes,
I don't want to let you go soon, so why don't we talk about your school? Tell us what it's like to be a trainer and how everything's going with the school.
So I absolutely love it, and I love it more than I ever thought I would. It was something that I always sort of wanted to do once I felt like I got enough experience under my belt that I could pass that knowledge on to other people. But we opened the school in 2016. I've had about 250 people come through our doors to at least attempt to be a professional wrestler. Of that 250, we've had 25 graduates, not a huge success rate. It's about a 10% success rate, which I like. We do not run your typical, you go to Taekwondo, they tell you within 2.5 years you'll have your black belt. We don't run that way. I put my stamp of approval on you, which is what the graduation thing is. Hey, I trained this person. I want to be able to know this person is good to go, and they're not going to, if you book them on your show, they're going to give you a good product, good performance. So, we train Monday through Thursday, 7 p.m. till class is usually from 7 to 9, 7 to 10, 7 to 11, it depends on the day. And then I give them open gym, so I allow them to just kind of hang out. They can watch tapes, they can talk to each other, be around like-minded people, cut promos, work on the stuff that we went over in class. And then, I can try to help them get in to the point where they can present themselves to promoters and try to get working. Right now there's about 10 different promotions that run in the Twin Cities on a regular basis. So there's a ton of opportunity for guys to, okay, when you're ready, just get out there and start working in front of a small crowd, but a live crowd.
That's great.
If anybody's interested, we have a website, which is the academyprowrestling@gmail.com, and you can email info@theacademyprowrestling.com, or you can call or text our number, which is 507-722-2776. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, just the Academy SOPW. And if you're interested, give us a buzz, text us, call us, send us an email, and we'll try to figure out what we need to do to make your dreams a reality.
That's awesome. Ken, is there anything else you want to promote before you go?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I just started up my YouTube channel again, which is Ken Anderson. We're going to start putting out some content there. I did some videos after I left WWE that got some recognition, and it just got to the point where it was a lot of work, and I'm sort of ready to jump back in with both feet.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. You've been great. Ken, that was awesome. Home run. Thank you so much for being gracious with your time. I ran around today, and you made it all worth it, man. Thank you so much.
Good deal. Thank you.
Yeah, have a great day, bud.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, workingfanswrestling_pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts when we get to talk to you